Hey everyone, this is Bob Kovacs here at Wirefly with another Wirefly cell phone Schmackdown, and this one brings a little bit of sadness to my heart because it compares a brand new phone, a top-notch, the heavyweight champion phone, the HTC EVO 3D on Sprint, with the year-old version of the EVO. This is the HTC EVO 4G. Now the EVO 4G is still a very nice phone. We love it here at Wirefly. It's been a terrific seller, and we are still selling it, and the price for it is an excellent price. But the EVO 4G is a year older technology-wise, and even just by strict calendar standards, than the EVO 3D. So there's no way that the EVO 4G can win this Schmackdown. Yet we want to compare these two iconic phones from Sprint. So let's get started with the Schmackdown, even though it is going to happen with a little bit of a heavy heart on my part. Now, both of these phones are 4.3-inch diagonal screens. The EVO 3D has got resolution of 540 by 960 pixels. The EVO 4G is 480 by 800. So although the screens are the same size, you can see that they are slightly different shapes. The screen on the EVO 4G is a little bit wider and slightly shorter than the screen on the EVO 3D. That's because the EVO 3D screen is the same aspect ratio as your HD TV at home. It's a 16 by 9 aspect ratio. That's slightly different than the screen that's here. They're both considered 4.3-inch screens. They're both LCD screens, but we have 480 by 800 pixels here and 540 by 960. So we have a lot more pixels over here on the EVO 3D. Of course, this is called the EVO 3D because it has a 3D camera. If you take 2D pictures, you take it with this lens here, and it can take 5 megapixel 2D images, and it takes about 2 megapixel 3D images. You can also take 3D videos at 720p resolution with both lenses. And of course, if you shoot 2D video, that again tops out at 720p. There has been some confusion that the EVO 3D could take 1080p HD video, and it cannot. Sprint has said recently that initial specs that showed 1080p were a mistake, that it tops out at 720p. The EVO 4G has got a single lens. It has an 8 megapixel still image camera. It can also do 720p HD video. Also, by the way, while we're on the back, the EVO 4G has a famous kickstand that allows you to sit it on a tabletop just like that. So if you want to watch a movie or if you want to do video chat using the front-facing camera, both of these phones have front-facing cameras, now the front-facing camera is perfectly aligned to face with you. The EVO 3D does not have a kickstand. A couple of reasons why. A kickstand would take up space, and that space would make the battery smaller. We haven't talked about the battery yet. I'll get to that shortly. So a kickstand would take up space that the EVO 3D uses for a battery. Also, I have found that when you take a 3D picture and you're looking at it, there's a sweet spot that's maybe a little bit different for just about everyone. So if it had a kickstand, you would have to kind of move around semi-awkwardly to find the right spot, moving back and forth to the phone to find the sweet spot to give you that 3D image. And a kickstand wouldn't really help with that. It's much better to just hold it in your hands and you will automatically find the sweet spot. Okay, I mentioned the batteries. Here is a big difference between these two. The battery in the EVO 3D is 1730 milliamp hours. That's 1730 milliamp hours compared to the 1500 milliamp hour battery that's in the original EVO 4G. So we have an additional 230 milliamp hours, about 15% more capacity in the EVO 3D. Many people have said that the EVO 4G's battery just didn't have enough oomph to get them through the day. Here you have 15% more oomph. Not only that, the processor, which we haven't talked about, is supposed to be able to manage power a little bit better in the EVO 3D than the EVO 4G. Okay, I mentioned the word processor. Here we have a 1.2 gigahertz dual core processor. Dual core, it's like having two processors in the phone, both of them running at 1.2 gigahertz. Here we have a 1 gigahertz single core processor. So right there, we have nearly 2.5 times the processing power in the EVO 3D. We have 1 gigabyte of processor available RAM in the EVO 3D versus 512 megabytes in the EVO 4G. So we have twice the processor RAM here than we have here. So everything about this is saying that the EVO 3D is going to be the faster phone. This ships with Android 2.3. In fact, it came with Android 2.3.3. The EVO 4G a year ago shipped with Android 2.2. It was among the first crop of phones that shipped with Android 2.2, and it worked very well on the EVO 4G. Now, this phone actually belongs to one of my coworkers. It's a white phone, very attractive, and he has upgraded it to Android 2.3.3. So both of these phones, as they sit here on the Wirefly Schmackdown ring, both have Android 2.3.3. So there's lots of differences in the new EVO. I've mentioned they both have front-facing cameras. I've mentioned the higher resolution here on the EVO 3D, the more processing power, the more RAM. This phone comes with 4 gigabytes of onboard storage, although not all of that onboard storage is easily available, and it comes with an 8 gig card, a micro SD card for additional memory. Of course, it'll support up to a 32 gig micro SD card. This also has a micro SD card slot. It also came and still comes with an 8 gig micro SD card. And I think it has 1 gigabyte of onboard storage, although some of you may have to remind me whether or not I got that right. So, you know, I still like the EVO 4G, but here's what separates the men from the boys, so to speak, when it comes to a phone like this. I'm going to run a single benchmark application. I'm going to run Smart Bench on both of these phones. I have that here in the Android market, so I'm going to go ahead and run Smart Bench. And I'm going to keep it on so that you can see what happens. Now, with Smart Bench, the software runs directly proportionate to the power of the device. In other words, the more powerful the device is, the faster the software runs. And you're going to see that the EVO 3D just creates a wind that practically knocks the EVO 4G off the Schmackdown ring here. So here we go. I'm going to run Smart Bench, and keep your eyes on it. Okay, it finished doing the mathematical calculations. Now it's doing this image, and it's already doing the tunnel. Watch how much faster it is on the EVO 3D than it is on the EVO 4G. And of course, the EVO 4G hasn't even gotten to it. Okay, it just got to it, and it's just crawling. You know, it really is kind of sad for me to see that. In its day, this was good performance. But the day of that level of performance clearly has moved on. So the EVO 3D is wrapping up the test. It did the final part of the test. I'm going to go ahead and get the scores for the EVO 3D. Excuse me if I'm confusing these names every now and then, because it really, when you're talking through this live without a script, you get some mistakes. And of course, Smart Bench gives you two scores. One is the productivity index and the other is the games index. On the productivity index, the EVO 3D got 2,902, that's 2902. And on the games index, it got 1,670, that's 1670. And as we watch, the EVO 4G just finished Smart Bench. I'll go ahead and get its scores. And I can tell you in advance that they're not going to be the same as what you saw here. And now it's my understanding that the Smart Bench test is running only on one of the cores in the EVO 3D. The other core is being held to work on other things that are necessary for the phone, such as events that happen in the background, including just making sure the radios are connected properly and so forth. Okay, we got the scores here for the EVO 4G, and the productivity score is 1010 or 1010, and the game score is 833. So the game score is roughly half on the EVO 4G is what you get on the EVO 3D, and the productivity score is less than half that you get on the EVO 3D. So as you can see from that, the EVO 3D is practically a quantum leap in power and performance for a cell phone. And again, we knew that was going to happen. So it's just a little sad to see that it's going to happen. And there's a lot of different things I could talk about with these two phones, but I'm going to wrap up now. There's no reason to keep piling it on the EVO 4G. We all love the EVO 4G here at Wirefly, and we hope to love it for some time longer because we're continuing to sell the EVO 4G. But the EVO 3D has definitely picked up the championship mantle at Sprint. It is currently the most powerful phone on Sprint. Now there's another phone, maybe a couple other phones that are coming in the next couple of months. There's the Motorola Photon, and possibly off in the distance, we think that there's going to be the Samsung Within. That is the Sprint version of the Samsung Galaxy S2, and possibly down the road there could be, this is a definite maybe, there could be off in the distance an EVO 4G Plus, which is basically based on the same hardware as the EVO 3D, only it doesn't have the 3D functions. Don't know about that one. That one's available internationally, but it is not yet being talked about in the US, but perhaps maybe we'll see that someday. In any event, this is Bob Kovacs with a Wirefly cell phone Schmackdown that has gone firmly in the favor of the HTC EVO 3D at Sprint. Both of these are 4G phones, by the way, using Sprint's 4G WiMAX network. Anyway, that is the end of the Wirefly cell phone Schmackdown. Thanks for watching.